Hi guys, good evening. Why are my lips so shiny? It's the light. The light is reflecting off my lips. Okay. Sorry about that. Um, Actually, I'm busy working here. I think it's Friday the 15th. So I'm not working for government because I got hola. I didn't get paid today. So I'm just fixing the slide. And a thought crosses my mind, right? So I was speaking to a friend of mine. And I'm like, friend, yo, I need to earn in lump sums. I can't be doing this um 5,000 rand here, 10,000 rand here business, which is quite a bit, quite a lot. I don't want to frown on it, but hear me out in context, right? Um, Yesterday I was in a town called Kopis, very small town, cute to say the least. It's got rail infrastructure, it's got water capture infrastructure that I like, and things like butcheries. Louis, I took a picture of Louis. I'll share the picture um, on my status. I took a picture of my car in front of Louis, and that's because I'm a Louis shareholder. So every time I see it anywhere around the country, I take a picture of it, right? And I essentially called an estate agent in the area and I was like, listen, I'm in your town, in the middle of nowhere, and apparently you're the person to go to for this sort of stuff. What was I looking for? I had driven around town like 5 times because it's so small. And I basically wanted somebody to tell me what's the underlying value that I'm looking at or I should be looking at, right? So she then says, what are you looking for, right? Are you looking for a house, a property? What is it? And I say to her that no, actually, I'm looking for farmland, one, and a business to buy, right? Or businesses. Because I actually wanted an inventory of all the businesses in the area and then just see how are they doing, what sort of money are they making, that sort of stuff. You guys know, I mean, I love business models. I love looking at finances. And so she was very excited and she's like, okay, no, I'll draw up a list. There's actually a butchery for sale, one of the biggest butcheries in town. Um, yeah, I'll have that drawn up and then I'll send it to you. And then you can let me know what you think. We set up an appointment for, I think, sometime in October. And basically, during this time, I'm waiting for that. And I think 2 or 3 dams in the area. And I was like, listen, I'd like to get um, a dam facing property. And yeah, I've always had dreamed of having jet skis on the one side of my property and the other side, essentially having a regular drive-in. I'm a swimmer, so that's why I'm very drawn to water, that sort of a thing. And I walked away thinking, for how easily she said the biggest butcher in town is up for sale. And some of the farmland that I saw and some of the things that essentially I saw and I thought I'd be interested in at very comfortable price ranges. I thought to myself, with a good 10 to 20 million, one can actually own the whole town, right? And when I say own the whole town, I don't mean buy your aunt and your kids and basically make them my pet family. No, by own the whole town, I mean there's about five infrastructure points or five types of infrastructure that you need for you to be running a town. So it's utilities. So you're looking at water and electricity, right? Without those two, it's very difficult to do anything for people in a very discernible manner, right? Then from there, you're looking at a health practice or a health place, so a doctor, a GP, that sort of a thing. And then the remaining two, it's essentially life type thing. So engineering on the one hand, so some sort of mechanic fixing system in the community to fix up stuff when they're broken. And then the last one is essentially lifestyle type of things. And by lifestyle, I mean like clothes, That sort of. I mean, I'm already a Louis shareholder in that town, but things like restaurant, like places, B&B, hotel, so things that bring in food or bring in money, right? And I know from the States, you can actually own utilities. From Monopoly, you guys have seen on Monopoly, you guys can actually buy like an electric plant or a water treatment system sort of thing. And I was looking at this town and I thought to myself that why the hell not, actually, right? And remember, with 10 to 20 million, I'm not saying that I'm just gonna buy one, and then I'm done, right? Although for 4 million rands, I think so that 20 divided by 4 million gives you five types of type 5 million. I mean, five different things that you can buy. So I think for 4 million each, I probably could get away with owning one or two, I mean, or three or four or five of those things, and then growing them to become the biggest, right? A 4 million rand investment in a clinic or doctor's surgeries where two doctors oscillate a week over the course of 10 years, that can literally grow into a medical center, that sort of thing, right? And I've basically been fascinated by the idea of owning a town ever since I drove away from there. So by the time I drove away, it literally was a thing of, buddy, I need to start earning in lump sums. I need to start being able to see two, three, 400k coming in initially a month, right? And then maybe then even a week. And funny enough, I didn't tell it to a lot of people, just my brothers who I was in the car with. And we joked about it. The one was like, yeah, that's my annual salary. And then I was like, yeah, in a week. And no offense, not even your annual salary. And I earned my previous annual salary, right? And we joked about it. But it's almost like I put it out there. Then this morning, I essentially spoke to three people that were speaking about it as a matter of fact, where it made sense what you would do to earn that, right? Because I've been helping out with some businesses, whatever. And one of them runs a travel agency. And we're just discussing, organizing a trip from here to, I think, China, New York, that sort of thing. So it actually, I think it's a 500k trip. So it's a family, you name it, the works. And I was fascinated by that. You guys would know, even property. I think one time I did a thing on property. I don't want to dwell too much on that. I'm fascinated by people with high spending patterns that are justified, right? That makes sense. And it reminded me of Michael. I was speaking to my significant other the other day, and she was like, "Why do you look so stressed?" And I was like, "Yo, dog, I actually need to be earning about 500k a month." Pardon me. It's not somebody that's getting me coughed up. I'm like, I need to be earning 500k a month. And it sounded like I was being unreasonable because it sounds like, why the hell would you be stressed about earning 500k a month? And I was like, I don't think people understand that there are actually people that are earning way more than 500k a month and struggling to make ends meet. And I thought to myself that why is it that they don't think the financial education that I'm speaking to speaks to them, right? Um, and I thought of the same thing. I thought, okay, so I'm gonna earn 500k a month, which essentially equates to like 6 million rand a year. Not even like it's 6 million rand a year. And the first thing that I learned was it's a lot easier to talk about it in terms of dollars, not as 500k, because I can imagine you guys are sitting there thinking, yo, this guy, $500, 500,000 a month is basically $27,000. It's really not that much. Like, there's this video that was doing the round. It's this guy, I don't know if he's a tennis player or what, and he was like, I live in Cape Town. I have a chef, sauna, uh, mansion. I eat out almost every day. And when I'm out, I try buy the most expensive bottle of wine. And I really struggle to spend $30,000 a month. And whenever I watch it, I'm always like, actually, $30,000 a month isn't that much. I mean, footballers are making, you get players that are making, Kevin De Bruyne apparently is making like 300,000 a week. So you can imagine $30,000 a month is nothing. He's making 300,000 pounds a week. So $30,000 is really nothing, right? And essentially that's that. So let me actually even calculate how much this $30,000 is. 30,000, I'm using an exchange rate of 18. It's 540,000 rands a month. So I actually am speaking about something that's doable and something that works. If you want to know how to live on that amount, right? One day I'll record a podcast on it. It's really not that hard, right? And that got me thinking that, okay, that's one half of the equation. Earning the $500,000 a month, 500,000 rands a month, or $30,000 a month, um, which is effectively whatever, $360,000 a year, right? And I was like, okay, and then what happens to my kids? Because they need to be able to live and sustain this sort of lifestyle. How then do I do what I do and then get them to be able to earn that or continue that as a legacy? And as most of us know, business is the way to do that. You build a business and then Bob's your uncle. Today's not that podcast, right? And so that made sense. And then I thought of the other stuff, but okay, what if they don't want to be in the business, which happens a lot, right? And it eventually brought me to, okay, I know how to invest in shares. I enjoy it very much. And actually, that's what I wanted to show you guys that I was busy working on today. I was essentially working on the US stock market. Some of you might know. I'm trying to essentially value the whole US stock market and then have a short list of companies that I can invest in that area, right? And the reason I want to do that, and now I'm going to speak in postulations or in future projections as if I'm speaking about, yeah, what then would I be doing then when I'm earning that amount of money with regards to these sort of shares, right? And I thought of my trip to Copies and how it was easy for me to basically be like, okay, let me speak to the estate agent and get a value of all the businesses and see a map of all the plots in the area so that I can see which 4 or 5 that I buy that are essentially going to prop up my ownership of this town, right? So I was like, yeah, at 500,000 rand a month, if I were then to think, how do I invest this for my kids so that they don't have to suffer when I'm gone? It literally was the same. That listen, you would look at your universe of assets and then available assets that you can buy that will generate income for your kids, right? Be it a business, you guys like property a lot, that's fine by me. Especially at those income levels, because at 500,000 a month, you should be able to buy an office building or to buy whatever if you save well enough and hard enough. Again, this is not a personal finance podcast. I'm here to talk investments, but that's the same line of thought. You essentially know your universe of opportunities, and then you take them on one at a time initially, and then they start compounding into one another and generating multiple revenue streams up to a point where you're genuinely generating 6 million rand a year. It's actually not that hard. And I'll calculate how big the asset has to be, right? And that essentially made sense. And one of the things I encounter is you don't know how difficult it is to find extra cash to invest when you are earning and living on 500,000 rand a month. I think one of my friends called it the sophisticated poor, right? And I laughed about it, but I actually genuinely thought this is a problem that I would like to solve. And one of the ways that I did think of it, as I say, was essentially this. If I say to you, buy shares for 10,000 rand a month, that means nothing. Like, that doesn't move your needle. Like, it's so useless that you don't even do it. The bar is too low to do that. Then I thought to myself, but from what I know about people in those income brackets, is that seldom times are they just working as a CEO somewhere and getting paid that amount of money. Yes, there are CEOs that earn that much, there are even footballers that earn that much, and that's good on them, right? But I'm talking about the average you and I who is actually on their way there to earning 500,000 Rand. I mean, to give you in context, literally all it takes is that you become a super specialist doctor with your own practice. And then I become literally, I grow my accounting practice to a certain level. We are a 500,000 Rand a month household. It can even happen that I grow my accounting practice by itself and we're 500,000 Rand a month household. But if you take that away and you insert another profession equivalent to that doctor, so I'm talking your engineers in mines at an executive, junior executive, senior executive level that are bringing home about 120 to 200,000 Rand, right? It actually then becomes quite doable to have the 500,000. But again, the dynamics of how you get there, I would be more than happy to record a podcast some other time on how to do it. But now you're there and you're finding yourself in a bind where you can't invest. One of the ways that I found is that you guys at that stage think in terms of assets, right? Which is something that I already do now. So I would just continue growing in this way. Like I'm so comfortable. I actually wanted to open my US portfolio um, and show you guys essentially how easy of a trade it was for me to basically hold Tesla, right? And I mean, not Tesla, Facebook, Meta. And those of you that know me will essentially know that I actually called it long before, and it was a no-brainer. Like it went down and came up, and I really didn't care at all. So much so that I actually wanted to, I actually wanted to put the whole portfolio in Meta. So there's Meta. Let me just share screen. I've got two screens, guys. So that's why you see me looking that way or that way for you guys. That's why you see me looking that way when I want to essentially share something because the controls pop up on that screen. So yeah, I think that should be now showing. So that's my US portfolio. I've got Alphabet, I've got Garmin. Those of you that use these running watches, I've got Intel for the laptops. And look at my Meta compared to everything else. Meta is essentially got the biggest share in my portfolio, right? Then you've got Intel that was second, and then Google and Alibaba thing third and fourth respectively. And then I've got your PayPal's, I've got your Oxy, which is Oxy's what do you call this? It's an oil company, right? The point of this was to show you that, oh, okay, so it's possible to earn in dollars already. Just then scale it up because this investment, I think that was like a 20,000 rands investment or like 10,000 rand that grew to 20,000 rand investment easily. I made this in October. We're now sitting in October the following year. It's 100% up. I made these others in October as well, and they're not 100% up. So it's not always that you're going to shoot the lights out, right? 5% there, 3% there, 7% there, 10% there, as well as 34% there, 5% there, right? So it's doable. And I think I wanted to get to that level of appreciation that the same way you wake up every day, go to work and earn your 500k, and then decide, let me buy a property here, a farm there, whatever, with a view of creating generational wealth. You genuinely could have an additional tool at your disposal, which is shares, where you say to yourself, let me put in 500k inside Facebook, 500k inside Intel, 500k inside Garmin, 500k inside of Alphabet, 500k inside of Alibaba. And those six investments are essentially 3 million rands that you would have put inside of them. And 3 million rands divided by 18. That's roughly short of 160 or $170,000. Not really much, but it's something. It's better than nothing so far, right? A 10% return on a 3 million rands portfolio that you've now just built with these six shares. A 10% return is essentially generating 300,000 per year, which you can now start to see that if over a span of 10 to 20 years, you've basically created, I think, a 30 million rand portfolio. You can basically replace your income. Actually, let me do the calculation. If I'm living on 6 million rands a year, and I say divide by zero point 0.1, no, not 8, right? For an 8% return, not 10% return, and I'm being conservative. I know with 10, I've taken it to 60, but I still do stupid maths, right? You're essentially looking at a 54 or 75 million rand asset that you would have built. Now, a lot of people think, yo, 75 million rands, when am I ever gonna get there? Again, let's talk outside of this call how to do this, but it's very doable. And the aim is also to start actually creating alternative assets that are creating that income. Some of you would have known that if you take 500,000 Rand in today's money and you put it inside your child's portfolio over 40 years, then they're sitting on 7 million after 40 years at the retirement. So essentially, the logic goes if you put in 5 million rands today, over 40 years, it's going to be 75 million. And for me, what's important with the 75 million is that I was doing it for my kids, not for me or my grandkids, actually, because my kids, I'm going to raise them, so they don't need my money. It's my grandkids I'm worried about. How do my grandkids be able to live the same standard of life that mommy and daddy lived because granddad lived? And one of the easiest ways is to put down 5 million rands, let it grow at a compounding level, whatever. And then when it's a 75 million rand asset, generating 8% per year, it would essentially be generating $500,000 a month for 500,000 rands a month. And if I get this in dollars, which is divided by 18, you're essentially looking at a $4.2 million asset. And this speaks to my previous video. I think it will also pop up somewhere here, where I was speaking about at 25, at 30, you can't afford to not make sure that in the next 10 to 20 years, you've worked in the DRC, you've worked in Kenya, you've worked in Rwanda, you've worked in Egypt, in Morocco, you've worked in India, in China, in the US, in the UK, even if it's virtually. And the idea is to create a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of opportunity for yourself that enables you to be able to confidently say to yourself that if an American can retire on $4 million in the same lifetime that I have, why can't I retire on $4 million as well? And it just so happens to be that $4 million is 75 million rands in South Africa, which seems undoable when you say it in rands. That's why I say with these numbers, you essentially have to work in dollars because otherwise it really doesn't make sense at all. At $4 million, then you essentially have recreated yourself for your grandkids. It may be a combination of generations. So for 20 years, from the age of 50 to the age of 70, you build up $2 million worth of assets. And then the remaining 20 years after you're gone or while you're still alive, your kids actually grow your $2 million to $4 million, capturing it nicely that when they're 60, you, what, plus 30 years, you 90. So at your deathbed, and they, your grandkids are roughly 20, 30, that sort of thing, you essentially have got a multi-generational timeline. You guys can tell I'm not a doctor, number one, and I'm not having babies left, right, and center. So on the aging, the spacing of the ages, you can hear it's quite off by a mile. The point was to get that 3-generational investing strategy going and earning. I think when you look at it in terms of asset size, so put in 500k inside Meta for the next year as a target. And then the following year, putting 500k inside Google. The following year, 500k inside of Alibaba, such that after 5 or 6 years, you basically are sitting with a 6 million rand portfolio, of 3 million rand portfolio that then can grow on itself at 8 to 10% per annum, such that over 40 years, it has grown closer to your 75 million rand goal. I think that way makes more sense than trying to find 10,000 rand to invest. And it's so small that you don't have an incentive, but you also are doing nothing. So you're not moving any closer towards your goal or towards actually providing for your grandkids. The rest is business as you know it. So you can continue buying your property, your real estate. You can continue buying your land, your farms as you wish. I've given more than enough of my opinion about property. I'm not gonna do it in this video, but in terms of shares, dividend paying shares, that sort of thing, that's what we're looking at. And as I say, the $4 million being in these companies, or let's say $2 million, if half of your 75 million is on the stock market and the other half is basically spread out throughout other assets, right? I was using these as an example. I have them today because they were valued in my lifetime, right? But something like Meta, where it's already 100% up, if you buying when I'm already 100% up, what margin is there for you to make? And that's where we will speak at another time, where I've essentially created this spreadsheet for you guys. I'm just gonna share, or not have created the spreadsheet for you guys. I'm creating the spreadsheet. Okay, there we go, it's up. I'm creating this spreadsheet where I essentially will be able to, the same way that I've created a portfolio with my SA companies, I'll be able to know of all of these American companies, listed companies. I saw Amazon somewhere there. I see Chevron, I see Clover, I see Coca-Cola, whatever. After I've valued all of these, there's about 700 of them. I'll drop a short list of about 20, and that's the 20 that you can basically target to say, listen, here I'm going to put away money aside to the tune of $2 million, $4 million for my kids to be able to then live on. I'll probably create something like this again. It's a book with all the shares that I would recommend. I'm getting my licensing. For those of you that are thinking, yo, this guy recommends. Yeah, I'm getting my licensing, so don't worry about that. You just worry about the mathematics. Don't, my licensing, I'll take care of. It's very important. It's not something that I take for granted. And essentially, so what I want to do for, so I'm going to do this for US shares as well. So you can see Louis there, Spur, the works. I'm going to make this book for the US portfolio as well. It was inspired by this one. This is a property brochure that I got when I was in Zimbabwe. And essentially, they were showing these properties that they've got for sale that are going for roughly about 4 or 5 million rand starters and go all the way to 300 million rand in a penthouse. And I found that cool. I think I found even reading the brochure very nice, so well, or so good, or so comforting that I actually even created one for my company. And I'll essentially do the same for my US shares once I've got all of them, and then put you guys in a position where you can basically say, okay, this is my universe of investment. So I'm gonna buy a town for 20 million. I'm gonna have a 20 million rand share portfolio, and the other 20 million, for example, you can say then that should come from your kids to donate to your grandkids, or even through dividends or through returns. That's how they will essentially get to make up the $75 million. I'm a fan of creating memories, and I think this is why this idea hit me when I was talking to my friend who does travel agencies, right? And it was getting to that thing that you get with travel. You know, after you've taken your kids around the world, you basically have this whole feeling that says you have given your kids something that they will treasure for life. Memories in Disney World, memories in China, on the Great Wall of China, whatever. But those are memories that you can actually commemorate inside of a portfolio. So imagine having Disney shares to the value of 500,000 Rand after 2 years, after having done a 500,000 Rand Disney holiday, right? And then those they can hold and pass on to your grandkids. And they can tell the story of the time dad took them to Disney World. And as a result, we now own Disney shares. And then they can then aspire to go to Disney World. And they actually will. If you create the 500,000 Rand Disney position today, the dividends alone will be able to be enough for your kids to take your grandkids to Disney World. And it can just be a long, what do you call it, a generational thing where as a family, you've got these core investments that basically allow you guys to go through the world owning shares in these core items. Apple is a phenomenal company. Over the last 10 years, I'm sure in one family, if you've gone through 3 generations of Apple iPhones, which are about 20, 30,000 Rand each, that means that if you, let's take the upper band, 30,000 Rand each, that's 90,000 Rand worth of phones that one of you would have owned over the last 10 years. And if it's 3 or 4 of you guys that owned iPhones, you've essentially owned about 300,000 to 400,000 rands worth of iPhones. The aim is not to guilt trip on that, is to essentially show how the same consumer spending that you have towards the things that create a good quality, well-rounded child, you essentially can do the same for equities and shares. I will create this short list of shares and share it, where you guys can see that these are shares that I like that don't have debt, that have got very good earnings, and a lot of the times are paying dividends. In the US, it's a lot harder to get a combination of all three. But I think you saw even with Meta that even without the dividend component, you still can have shares that are very undervalued and can go 100% up. And then the idea is to essentially have a picture book that your grandkids can one day have that essentially show the share portfolio of the family. I'm getting this wrong now. The share portfolio of the family that says, oh, this is the time where we went to Disney World with granddad. This is the time where we went to Shanghai with granddad. And here's the share certificate next to it. Because without the share certificates, then you've basically just only created those memories and that type of a lifestyle for your kids. And you hope that South Africa will offer them the opportunities to create the same lifestyle for you, for their kids, which are your grandkids. But with that methodology of investing, whatever, you essentially can guarantee that your grandkids are also going to see New York. They're also going to see Paris, France, that sort of thing. I'm going to leave it there because that was essentially the crux of how I was navigating the conversation of once I get to the 500,000 rands a year, I mean a month income, then what? Because then how do I get my kids to do the same and then basically create it to be multi-generational in the family so that I don't become the one person that broke the ceiling and got our family to a certain standard and then the kids can't take it further. I actually can do the heavy lifting for the next 2 or 3 generations, and then they will then take it there going forward. There's a book that I had here by the desk. I think I'll just post a picture of it. It's called Strategy for the Wealthy Family. Some of these things that I come up with is because I've read that book, Strategy for the Wealthy Family. It was written by 2 professors, I think, that essentially have been the descendants of multi-generational wealth. And they effectively then decided to write this book that creates a blueprint for how to come up with models like these, where you create wealth for generations to come, as well as a code of living and a code of life. So already you can see in that example, you'd have passed on the value that comes from traveling, the value that comes from education, the value that comes from always knowing your opportunity set and then putting money to it and giving it credence. I will leave it there. I'm Chairman Mo. Because it was a high and hit with episode, please do feel free to contact me. We can have a conversation about looking at your, what do you call it, your portfolio, your place in life, and then how we can structure it in such a way that we get to understand where you stand, get to understand what you'd like to do for your kids, and then roll that forward. Peace.